Welcome to Hope in the Morning, turning tragedies and tears into testimonies of hope.
Welcome to Hope in the Morning. I'm your host, Emily Curtis, and my guests today, Josh and Meshea Ingram, have turned misery into a mission. Her deepest sorrow has been met with the deep mercy of the Lord, and they have faithfully proclaimed His goodness alongside their testimony. Josh and Meshea, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to dive in and talk about the fact that you guys started this wonderful organization called Love Can Build a Briggs. And can you tell me a little bit about that organization and what inspired it?
Sure. So while we were in the hospital with Briggs, he was in the hospital for 5 days after his accident. He was involved in a drowning accident in our family lake house in July of 2022. And while we were in the hospital afterwards, a family friend had a dream that we began a drowning awareness nonprofit in his honor named Love Can Build a Briggs. And she had the name and everything in her dream. And she told us about it at the time, but I just couldn't wrap my mind around that yet. But in the months that followed Briggs' passing, it became very evident that the Lord had given her that dream to share with us because it was going to become our reality. And it did. We're almost in year 3 of having Love Can Build a Briggs. And it's a drowning awareness and water safety organization. And we also provide grief support to other families who have lost a child.
Wow, that's wonderful. You guys really got started on that very quickly.
Yes.
Was that a hard thing to jump into quickly?
Yes and no. Especially me, so Josh likes to be busy, and then he's a fireman, but I chose to stay at home and raise my babies and homeschool them. So I could tell very quickly that I needed a purpose and a mission, and the charity gave me just that. And it was also a way that I could honor Briggs. So I know that it was God sent, and He is who put it on our heart to start that right away. Because I think it's He, of course, has sustained us, but having that mission has also just motivated us to keep going day after day like we do.
Yeah. You had mentioned that you lost Briggs in a drowning accident. How old was Briggs?
Briggs was 2.5. He would have turned 3 that December.
Okay. And you have other children as well?
Yes, we have a daughter, Allie. She is now 11. She was 8. She was 8 at the time.
Okay. And now, Josh, Meshea mentioned that you are a firefighter, and I'm curious how the loss of Briggs affected your job in those coming weeks and months, and just knowing that as firefighters, a lot of times you have to go and you visit a lot of hard scenes. Mm-hmm. How did that affect you in that way?
As far as going back to work, I was fine. Everyone was really supportive and I guess sensitive about what they said or where we went or who went to do what for certain calls, I guess. Mm-hmm. But everything worked out fine.
Yeah, and the fire department is a brotherhood. So he had an amazing community around him, and they did so many things to keep him emotionally safe and honor Briggs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really neat thing, because a lot of men don't have that. A lot of men don't have a brotherhood like that can stand beside them and help encourage them and keep them strong and steady in the midst of heartache. And how did you guys comfort your daughter in that time?
We let Allie know that she could be honest with us. She didn't have to hide her sadness or grief, and there was nothing she could say that would make us sad or hurt our feelings. We just wanted her to know that she could 100% express how she was feeling, what she wanted to do, to honor Briggs. We also let her be an active part of the charity. She helps with so much at only 11 years old. But just letting her know that she's included and she's allowed to be honest, share her ideas with us. Grief is definitely a family journey, and I do try to hide the heavier parts of it from her, and let those moments be more private. But I've let her watch me gently grieve so that she knew it was okay for her to do that too.
Yeah. Did you have to make kind of an intentional effort for that to allow yourself to grieve publicly in front of her?
Yes, because my first instinct is to hide it from her because she's a child and I want her to look at me as a strong woman. But I felt like it was important for her to see me be sad sometimes so that she would know and feel more comfortable to be sad too. I didn't want her to ever feel like she had to hide how she was feeling.
Yeah. I think that's great. As parents, I think that is kind of like our go-to. Like we think that we are giving our kids protection, I guess, in a sense, by not grieving openly in front of them. But it offers them the ability, like you had said, Meshea, is the ability to see someone that they do look up to and that they do look at as a strong mom and a strong dad, and see that when our hearts are aching, it's okay to be sad and it's okay to let the tears flow, to grieve him. And you know, I guess you're about 3 years out from your loss of Briggs, and I would assume that the grief is just as strong on days as it first was. Can you tell me kind of what grief has looked like for you, like from year 1 versus year 3?
Yes. So year one, you are still very much in shock and everything is still so raw and sensitive. And you're kind of running on adrenaline. You also still have that communal support. People are still very aware of your pain and they want to help in that. But after year one, that begins to kind of trickle off because people go back to their normal lives. They're not living with the pain that we're living with every day. So the community does kind of, back off. And you almost feel like people think that it's time for you to move on. And obviously you can't. You don't ever stop loving your child. So grieving a child is never going to end either. And now, as his 3-year anniversary comes up, I've actually noticed I'm having a very hard time as we approach that milestone because it will signify that he's actually been in heaven longer than he was on earth. And that's a
Yeah.
really hard milestone to face.
Yeah, I think that's important for the listeners to understand that, when you face those anniversaries of, just like you said, that you've had him longer in the arms of the Lord than he was in your arms now. And there's a very, I guess, a sobering sadness that can come with that because, you would have desired to have him in your arms all the length of his days, and that he would have had extended length of days. What are some things now in year 3? What are some things that people in the church specifically can do to encourage families that are in year 3, year 4, year 5?
Church community specifically, it would help to know that we're not being rushed in our grief, and like to even acknowledge that grieving is not going to end just because time passes.
Yeah.
You can still be a strong Christian. You can be a Christian, period, and grieve. That doesn't mean you're lacking in faith because you're sad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show weakness as a Christian either. In fact, I feel like I'm a stronger Christian now. And I've been saved since I was a little girl, but I feel like an even stronger Christian now than before, because of the way our grief has just made us rely on the Lord like never before.
Mm.
So just, knowing that we're not being rushed, and that it's not weakness. Just acknowledgement of both our grief and our faith, no matter what the timeline looks like.
Yeah. That's such a good point to point out the fact that grieving does not mean that your faith is weak. That doesn't mean that you don't have a strong relationship with the Lord. It means you loved your son and that you miss your son. And that's a godly thing. We are called to love our children and provide for them and protect them. And um, that's the new form that love takes on. When your loved one dies, it takes on grief. And so that's your expression. That's your outward outpouring of love. Um, Before we go to break, can you let me know a couple of the ways that you and your family honor Briggs?
Yes. So like I mentioned before, we started the charity Love Kimball to Briggs in Briggs honor. We hold a charitable event once a year. So we've had it twice now. It's called Briggs Day. And we hold it the closest Saturday to his heaven date. And it's just a way that we can bring honor to his life, and it feels like a celebration of his life rather than a time to mourn. And we make it a big community event so everyone can be a part, and the focus is a family fun day. But we also have a memory walk for all children who have gone ahead of us to heaven, to honor all families who are walking the same journey that we are. We also, for his birthday, we do a lantern release to just, celebrate the day God gave him to us.
Yeah. What state is Briggs Day held in?
Georgia.
In Georgia. Okay. What town is it in?
It's in Bremen.
In Bremen. Okay. Well, some of our listeners might want to join you guys one of those days on one of those special Briggs days. That's really special. And when we come back, I would love to hear more just about who Briggs was, what made him special, and also how you guys helped maintain a strong marriage through that, because that also can be a difficult thing. So join us in just a moment on Hope in the Morning.
Do you have a heart to comfort the hurting? Do you want to show the world that through Jesus Christ we can have hope in all circumstances? Well, then we welcome you to visit hopeinthemorning.org and see how you can join us in these ministry endeavors. May you be encouraged by who our God is as you continue this episode of Hope in the Morning. To learn more, visit us at hopeinthemorning.org. Hope in the Morning is a nonprofit ministry that seeks to encourage the hurting, equip those who walk beside them, and evangelize the lost with the hope of Jesus Christ. To partner with our ministry or to make a donation in your loved one's honor, please visit hopeinthemorning.org. Your donation helps keep these stories of hope on the air and helps tangibly meet the needs of the hurting.
Welcome back to Hope in the Morning. Today I'm sitting down with Josh and Meshea Ingram, and we are talking about their sweet little boy Briggs and the foundation that they started in his honor. I'm going to open with a verse from Isaiah 41:10 that says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will also help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So often when we lose something precious to us, there's an element of fear there. Your whole world has just been turned upside down and shaken, and you wonder what the future is going to look like. I would love for you guys to share with us not only who Briggs was and what really made him special, but then also, what did those days and weeks after you first lost him, what did that look like for you, for your family?
So Briggs was our rainbow baby. We had a miscarriage about a year or more before we had him. So he was our promise after the storm. and he was so full of light. He was so mischievous and fun and joyful. I mean, he had the biggest personality in that little body. Um, I call him, he was our light. He truly was just that missing piece of our life. Allie began asking for a sibling. At the time, we couldn't fathom having another child because we loved her so much. I remember being so scared to have another one. And then the Lord gave us Briggs, and it truly felt like our lives were complete with him in it. He had the most infectious laugh. I can't explain his laugh. You just have to hear it, but it would fill up a room and it would make everyone else cackle behind him. There's a picture actually of him just bent over laughing, and you can just see his little dimples and how hard he was laughing. I tell everyone, I think God gave him such a big personality because he knew he would only be here a short time and that he would leave a great legacy behind.
Were there things for you, Josh, that you loved specifically about having a son?
I guess the fact that he always wanted to go wherever I was going or do what I was doing.
Yeah.
Especially the older he was getting, the more he wanted to go with me.
Aw. Was he a really talkative little boy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wide open.
He was wild as Indian.
That is so much fun. And were he and his big sister, were they just glued at the hip all the time?
Yes. Now there was a 6-year age gap, so obviously they had different interests, but they were still very close for there to be such a great age gap there.
So for you guys in those first couple weeks, talking through the verse that I just read about how, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. In those first weeks when you just feel shock, as you were saying, Meshea, how did you cling to the Lord during that time?
So I remember praying in the hospital first. Josh performed CPR for 30 minutes after he pulled Briggs from the lake, and he regained a heartbeat in the ambulance, and then was life flighted to UAB Children's, where he remained on life support for 5 days. So during those 5 days, we just prayed and pleaded and believed that God was going to heal Briggs and give him back to us. Our minds kind of didn't go anywhere else. Like, we just knew this will just be our miracle and it'll be Briggs' testimony one day. So we hadn't prepared ourselves for the possibility that he might actually pass away. So when he did, my first prayer was, Lord, keep me, because I knew that, I could lose my mind. Like, truly, I was scared of that happening. So I just stayed in a constant state of prayer. And then, given the way that Briggs passed, that haunted my mind. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many nights that I just laid awake, just tormented in my mind. So I started reciting Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And eventually I would just fall asleep reciting that chapter over and over again. It was just constant prayer and reciting, verse after verse, that I was even able to make it during those first few weeks.
There's a book, I'm not sure if you guys have read it. Granger Smith, have you guys read his book, River? So he talks about that. He talks in that book about how one of the things he really struggled with as a parent was just feelings of guilt afterwards. And was that something that you guys struggled with at all?
Yes, I did. I did big time. Obviously it was an accident, and no parent can be everywhere at once and have eyes everywhere at once. And unfortunately, after the fact, we have found out that drowning can happen in as little as 30 seconds.
Mhm.
And it's silent. It's not like you see on TV. It could be
Yeah.
happening right beside you and you wouldn't know it. So yes, I dealt with a lot of guilt, and the Lord has really had to help me overcome that amount of guilt because I mean, it's your job as a parent to protect your child, but accidents do happen. That's just the way of
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of wrestling with the Lord through prayer to even be able to live with myself, to be honest.
You know, that's one of the things I think is important for the listeners to know too, is that drowning is silent and it happens fast. And
Mhm.
so it oftentimes is not due to negligence. It is not due to a parent that isn't paying attention. It just happens so fast. And I think I know that Granger Smith dealt with people just saying terrible things and things that really were ignorant because you don't know what that is. And I think the fact that you guys have a program now where you educate people on swim safety and what drowning looks like, that's such a great thing. And it's such a needed thing because it doesn't look like what the movies portray it to be. That's not what it looks like. Um, Josh, did you find that you were able to help Meshea when she was struggling with those feelings of guilt?
Uh, I try to do my best, as hard as it was sometimes.
He
Yeah.
did. He constantly reassured me that it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
He was
It's
very great. He exemplified grace in those moments for sure.
I love that, and one of the things that we talk about sometimes on Hope in the Morning is which I think that you had a great support system as a firefighter, it sounds like, but oftentimes men don't, and here they are leading their family through grief and facing the grief themselves, and that's a heavy burden,
Right.
and so what would you say, Josh, are some practical ways, whether it's ways that your fellow firefighters stepped up and showed you compassion and love, or people in your church or in your community, what are some practical ways that men can step in and help encourage and support other men who are grieving?
Just being present, staying in contact, the quick
Mm.
text, hey, thinking about you, praying for you, the phone calls, just
Yeah.
really just staying in contact,
Yeah,
That's
presence.
present.
yeah, and communicating with
Mhm.
you, that's great. What did you guys do to help keep your marriage strong?
Do you want to talk about it? Well, one thing we had to do was recognize how we were going to present our grief because we're very different. He's very inward,
Mm.
whereas I like to express myself verbally.
Yeah.
So he had to be a good listener, and I had to look for the ways that he presented his grief physically because he didn't do so verbally.
Okay.
And at first it bothered me, but the Lord helped me show him grace in those moments, um, and helped me see he was grieving. He was just doing it in a different way. So I
Mm.
started noticing those ways so I could recognize it and be there for him um, in those moments. And just knowing that we had to constantly remember that we were on the same team. We were fighting the same battle,
Mm.
and two are better than one. So there
Yeah.
was no sense in attacking each other.
Mm.
So we just try to stay supportive, show grace to each other. Josh, I call him my roots. He's definitely um, I don't want to say more emotionally stable. I don't think I'm unstable, but he's just more sound, I
Yes,
guess
I
you could
totally I totally get that, yes. My husband and I are the same way. He's nothing really phases him,
say.
whereas I feel all my emotions and I feel them big.
Yes,
But
that's how I am,
also
and he's
yeah, yeah, and
yes,
I think that it's that's a blessing really from the Lord when you can have that strong and steady, like, anchor of a
mhm,
husband, and, I know that oftentimes for me, I joke with my husband, I say, you're my therapy human, because he just like, I just feel calm when I'm with him, and there's a comfort in that. And even with both of you, having lost Briggs, you lost an equally precious person in your lives.
Mhm.
Only the two of you know what it's like to have him as your child. And so even though you grieve differently, that's such a big thing to have in common, that to be able to see, okay, he is grieving, he's just grieving in a different way. How can I have grace toward that and read that for what it is, even though it's different than my grief. Did you guys have tools that you used at all during your journey, whether it was like counseling or journaling or anything that you guys found helpful?
Um, Together, no. Separately, he dove into work more. That's his passion.
Okay.
So he was able to pursue that. Um, I did go to counseling. I actually have a psychology degree in Christian counseling. So
Okay.
I actually only counseled for just a little while because I was counseling myself.
Yeah.
She said, "You would make a really good counselor." And I was like, well, as a matter of fact. However, I do highly recommend that. I believe in it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Um, we we really leaned into our community, whether it was our family or our friends or our church or the fire department. Those things helped us the most, just having that large safety net around us. That
Yeah.
was probably the strongest tool we had.
I love that. I think it's so important to have tools. And even having been a counselor, I think that you probably had a greater arsenal of tools that you could think through that the average person maybe doesn't have at their disposal without going somewhere else. Um,
Yeah.
when we continue our episode on YouTube, I would love to talk more about kind of what your organization does, like what you teach in that, and also just how, like, what Josh's involvement is in that and how people can contact you. Before we go, though, I would love for you to just say how they can contact you and learn about your organization. And then those of you that want to continue hearing more of their story, you can join us on YouTube at Hope in the Morning Backstage, and we will continue this episode. But in the meantime, Josh and Meshea, where can they find more information about Love Builds a Briggs?
Okay, we have a website, www.lovecanbuildabriggs.com, and we are also very active on social media, both with the charity and on my personal blog. I share a lot about my hope in the morning, and it's under She Who Prays.
Okay. So She Who Prays is for your Instagram and for your blog?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, go find them on lovebuildsbriggs.com and She Who Prays. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you guys will join us for the remainder of this conversation on Hope in the Morning Backstage. Have a wonderful evening. All right. So with your guys' organization, you were saying that you do like a family fun day once
Mhm.
a year where they do the memory walk as well. And
Right.
then you do training as well, right? Like swim safety training. Is that right?
So we offer swim scholarships
Okay.
for children for um, survival swim lessons.
Okay. So how many people on average do you give those scholarships to yearly?
I don't have it broken down yearly, but I actually just did a count for like a recap. And we have been able to sponsor around 25 plus children so far. And we're not even to the 3-year mark yet.
Okay.
Um,
Is that like the ISR? Is that what it's called?
yes. Yes,
Okay.
it is. It's ISR. And we sponsor those specifically because drowning is the leading death for children ages 1 to 4.
Mm,
And those swim lessons are tailored to infant and toddlers. We just, in my research, I have found that it provides the best foundation for survival in the
yeah.
water. for young children, and they are a more expensive lesson because they are very extensive. It's not just how to swim, but it's how to survive.
Yeah.
So those are
With
the ones that we provide scholarships for.
with the ISR, and maybe you've spoken on this before. I can't remember if I've seen it on your social media, but I know many of us parents, myself included, have used the puddle jumpers. And here we are coming up on summer and lots of swimming happening. What is your take on the puddle jumpers?
So what puddle jumpers and floaties do is provide a false sense of security. They tell a child that they know how to swim when in fact they don't know how to swim, and that's not the only danger. They they it, they position their bodies in the water in what is known as the drowning position, which is the vertical position. So what drowning looks like is slow vertical sinking and climbing an invisible ladder. And unfortunately, those swim devices put children in the drowning position. So if they were to get into the water without that puddle jumper arm floaty on, they would instinctively go in that vertical position. And that's the position that, will lead to drowning.
Yeah.
I was not aware of these things before we lost Briggs. So I don't blame anyone for not being educated on that. But a child's best flotation device is their bodies. And they don't know to do that if they're not taught. And that is what ISR teaches them, is how to roll over on their back to float like this, to get in the swim position, roll over to get air and rest, and then roll back over and swim, and then roll back over on their backs and float and get air. A young child can't sustain a swim, so they need to know how to float. And I hear parents say, well, isn't a puddle jumper better than them not knowing not knowing how to swim and not having a device? And I'm like, no. If they don't know how to swim, they should not be out of your arms. They should be in your arms at all time in the water, or they just shouldn't be in the water. Like, you can find other water activities until they're able to learn how to swim.
So with the scholarships that you guys give out, have the recipients for those been countrywide, or are they mostly localized to your state?
No, they are countrywide. It's not just our area that we service. It is anywhere in the U.S.
That's incredible. So is that something that people can go on your website on Build a Briggs, lovebuildsabriggs.com and apply? Is that where they
Love can build a Briggs.
Love can build a Briggs. Okay. So they can go on lovecanbuildabriggs.com, and that's where they would learn about all of that and apply for a scholarship.
Yes, that is where they can apply for the swim scholarship. And we have a resources tab. It'll have the scholarship, appropriate swim devices, which is a U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket.
Okay.
And then where they can find an instructor near them. We have 3 links where you just tap those links, enter your zip code, and it'll pull up the closest instructor near you.
Okay. That's neat. So did you guys find the nonprofit to be something that was a difficult thing for you guys to start, as far as just all that's involved with it? Or was it something that you both kind of found a common passion in, and so the work was made less daunting because you both are doing it together with a passion?
It's mainly all Meshea.
Okay.
Go ahead and get that out there.
He works a lot. He's my support. I have his full support, and he absolutely helps when he can.
Yeah.
But it's both. I mean, it is my passion, so it motivates me. However, it is still daunting because it's a lot of work, and it requires so much, not just physical energy, but mental energy, because I'm constantly talking about what took my child. And it makes it twice as hard because drowning is 100% preventable. And I wasn't made aware of the statistics or what I could do to prevent it as a mother. So that's why I've made it my life's mission to, warn other families and educate other families. But it takes a lot of strength from the Lord to to sustain me to keep talking about it. It's not an easy topic.
Yeah, it's not. And, even with you saying that it's hard because drowning is 100% preventable. And yet we've also learned that it's the number one cause of death for children ages 1 through 4. And
Mhm.
so, although it's preventable, because it's so quick and so silent, it happens. It's prevalent. Although preventable, it's prevalent. And I think having a voice where you guys can talk about this and being willing to do the hard thing. I've seen too where you've done some other interviews at churches and gotten up there and been the speaker, and that's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing for you guys to come on today and open up and talk about losing your son. And I've seen pictures of him. He was a beautiful child and full of life, and um, with you guys being willing to steward his life in that way, where you are willing to say that you want other parents to hopefully not have the same heartache that you have gone through. So you're willing to get up there and do the hard thing and talk about that. Josh, I am curious, and you can choose not to answer this if you don't want to, but I actually just had my brother on the episode that I recorded right before you. And one of the things that he spoke about, they were speaking about infertility, but they also spoke about PTSD. And he served in the military. He was a medic in the army, and served during the Afghanistan and Iraqi war. And it has impacted him greatly. Like, he suffered a lot because of that. And so did you suffer PTSD being the one that found your son and distributed PTSD or distributed CPR? Was that something that you had to work through, that aspect of it?
Yes, to an extent. So what it mainly did was made me more aware of everybody else's feelings and
Mm,
what they're going through, instead
yeah,
of it just being a routine call for me.
yeah,
Then I'm more understand their feelings more now, what they're going through,
yeah,
rather than getting in and out. So it's helped me in that aspect. But as far as PTSD, I can't say yes, and I can't say no.
yeah.
Kind of in between.
I think that's the fact that it's made you a more empathetic firefighter. It's being a firefighter is a hard thing too. One of my cousins he's a firefighter in Los Angeles, and there's an aspect where you kind of do have to shut off your emotions because you see so much that nobody wants to see. And so in order to do your job day in and day out, there is an aspect where it's to your benefit to be able to kind of put that on the back burner, to kind of disassociate that a little bit. And um, I would be willing to bet that you have been a solace for a lot of parents that you showed up to various calls for, because of the fact that you now have a more compassionate mindset, as you were just saying, and can have more empathy on your
Right.
calls. That's an important thing. That's what makes people in those positions of service so much more helpful and comforting to those that you're serving. I appreciate you being willing to answer that question. I know that's not an easy question to answer, but I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking today. I think that the foundation that you guys have started is a wonderful foundation and very needed. Meshea, I know that you are working tirelessly at not only that foundation, but are you still homeschooling your daughter too?
Yes, I am.
It's a lot, right?
Yes, it is so
There's
much work.
yeah, there's a lot, but the Lord has clearly given you guys a direction for how he wants you to steward your grief. And I think that it's a great example to other people that you're willing to not only talk about Briggs and talk about what you guys have experienced, but showing that you have now set it on a mission, that you've set your grief on a mission to honor Briggs and to help inform other people so that they, Lord willing, will not suffer the same grief that you guys have walked through. But just, from what little I've gotten to know of you guys, even just on Instagram, I think that you guys have been a beautiful testimony of trusting the Lord in that, and being honest about what you're feeling and what it's like to be a lost parent, but trusting the Lord and all of that. I really appreciate you guys being willing to come on Hope in the Morning.
Yes, we were honored to be here.
Yeah. So if you guys would like to learn more about their ministry that they have now, their mission, you can go to Love Can Build a Briggs, and Briggs is Briggs, lovecanbuildabriggs.com. And you can learn more about all that they do and their nonprofit, and would strongly suggest that if you have young children, that you check out that website, especially before we enter swimming season. So thank you again so much for joining us on Hope in the Morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope in the Morning is a nonprofit ministry that seeks to encourage the hurting, equip those who walk beside them, and evangelize the lost with the hope of Jesus Christ. To partner with our ministry or to make a donation in your loved one's honor, please visit hopeinthemorning.org. Your donation helps keep these stories of hope on the air and helps tangibly meet the needs of the hurting.